It is forecast to have a bit of rain today. It's Gehi Hut.
Oh shit, Rick.
Don't see that too often. Doctor's hut. The old Gehi Hut. It's almost like a small village. They're good places. This is the Mitamita here. We're at a place called Joker's Flat, and we've camped here before, a lad and myself, a while ago. That end of the flat, I think. It's quite a bit of room here. There's a big crew just up the back there, and there's another big crew up there. The odd bod scattered throughout the scrub. It's quite noisy right here, so I suspect that's why this spot wasn't taken. There's a bit of fast water just here. Yeah, quite like this spot. I mean, day like today, it's perfect. Lad got the fire going. Once again, we've elected to use our fire pit as opposed to the fire ring. They're the formal fireplace, if you like. But if we were to use that site there, our little bit of firewood that we've got here actually wouldn't get us through the night. But I'm calculating that, you know, there's a handful of wood there, that'll be enough for us to cook on tonight, keep warm until bedtime. Whereas if we use that pit there, you just don't get the same return for effort. How deep it is. In the whole of the campsite, that's for sure. Unfortunately, I'm not brave enough. Better people than me would be in there like a flat. Take it all in rather than get in. Gone pretty simple tonight, but we're actually prepared, which is something a bit unusual. So what we've done, we roasted some veggies at home, cryo-vac them, and then all we have to do is heat them up in the billy, boiling water. So that's pretty simple. It's probably not a lot there, but when you measure it up, it's what we would have at home. And then we've got drained peas. We haven't done anything, so we don't need a huge meal. Need to drain the peas. Should have done that before dinner. Anyway, there you go. Lamb chops, roast veggies, and peas. Looks alright. I'll have a bit of smoke. It's quite mild this morning. It's just after 7 o'clock, but it was 8 degrees there just a few minutes ago. Very mild morning. Full cloud cover though. It is forecast to have a bit of rain today. Anyway, we'll take that as it comes. It's out of our control. So this is just a little kickstart overnight camp just to start our trip off. We're planning on heading up into the high country, rightly or wrongly. We're going to go walking for a few days, touring for a few days, Yeah, look, we're at the mercy of the weather really. Going into the high country this time of the year and expecting clear, stable days. We've just got an unusual season this year and it's not following the rule book so far. It's generally been pretty wet. Anyway, we're going to go. If it chases us out, then so be it. Plan is to visit a few of the historic huts. We'll see how we go. Having some leftover water in the thermos makes the early morning starts just that little bit more bearable. The alternative, a quick dip in the river, is not something I've been able to master. Although I am envious of those that can. Maybe something to work on. Once we are packed up, it's time to head north. Our destination? Some New South Wales high country huts. After a day or two's driving, we find ourselves on the Gehi Hut flats, just north of the border. This area is home to numerous huts with fascinating architecture and history. This hut is considered large, at about 11 metres by 9 metres in area and comprises 3 rooms. Built of river stones on a concrete and dirt floor, there's an elaborate fireplace in what would have been the kitchen and communal area. This is Gehi Hut, right on the banks of the river there. It was used by the Nankervis family, or built by the Nankervis family, who ran or owned all this country here on the Gehi Hut flats up until the 1960s, about 1958 or thereabouts, when the road was put through. Sort of changed the way they went about things, started being able to bring in some cropping machinery and that sort of thing. But while they were running cattle here, they would use the Hannell Spur to access the high country, so they'd run cattle right up the spur, which is reputedly the longest spur in Australia, about 1770 metres long, single climb, and that'd take you right up towards Mount Townsend there, depending on the type of stock, would branch off at different points along that spur. The young fit stock would get right up higher. The older cows in calf would stay down low and head around towards the Ram's Head. So quite a history, but you can see why they built it here. I mean, it is in cloud at the moment. When I turn around right up the back here, you've got the main range running right through there. What a great vista. Got a river right here and the main range just behind us. You can see exactly why this was an attractive bit of country. No doubt it was quite productive as well. The vista and the outlook and the location are just amazing, amazing. Arthur Keeble built this hut. He was a mate of the Nankervises who had all this property about 1948. Keeble was a engineer on the hydro scheme, and he was a keen trout fisherman apparently. He was good mates with the Nankervises and offered and was duly accepted, obviously, the opportunity to build a hut here as a bit of a recreation lodge, and the Nankervises certainly enjoyed coming here and using it for their fishing exploits, as well as Keeble and his mates. It's a great spot. Once again, there's an awesome view straight out to the main range there, and you can only imagine the good times that went on here. Popular camping site. Plenty of people here. It is the middle of school holidays. Parks have put in some new dunnies right through this country, so it's a bit of work going on. Good to see. All the iron that was used for construction, given that it had to come in on pack horse, they used short length. All the roofing iron, it was all short length, so that it didn't get hooked on the trees and scrub and everything on the way in on the narrow bridle trails. And all the timbers were hewn from surrounding forest. We're quite low here, so there's obviously some big trees, big timber, easy access to good wood, and obviously no second guessing where the main building material come from. Selectively sourced from the river. But apparently what they did was they'd use A-frame, sort of forked trees, drag behind a horse, and load up the fork of the tree with all the river rocks and drag it up. Four-legged version of a wheelbarrow. a leg barrow. Probably a name for it. They were quite innovative, obviously, and if it meant saving a bit of effort, then that's what you did. Keebles Hut. Water is freezing. It's excruciating. Oh, Jesus! Oh, painful.
Oh, shit, Rick.
Doctor's Hut, another one of the numerous huts along the Swampy Plains River on the Gehi Hut flats. But I tell you what, getting over here, it was bloody frigid cold. We saw other people swimming in it further back upstream, but it was tough just standing in it, walking through it. So hats off to those that can have the fortitude and the nerve to be able to go for a swim. Good on you if that's you. Doctor's Hut, also known as Forbes Hut or Nicholson's Hut, after Dr. John Forbes and Ned Nicholson, who built this hut after the original hut had burnt down for the first time in the 1939 fires. As it turned out, this wouldn't be the last time this hut would be impacted by fire. Obviously another one of those huts that were built further downstream. There was a series of huts built, obviously built in the same style, same era. A lot of work gone into them, a lot of work. And what's also interesting is they've stood the test of time. And it's fairly weathered. Got a bit of moss growing on it, but other than that, it's in ship-shape condition. The old Gehi Hut. It's on a great spot here, big bend in the river, nice flat there, great camping, and the crew here set up. Apparently they're on their annual pilgrimage, week-long trip this time every year, fishing competition amongst the lads. Been doing it since about 1986, so good on them. Anyway, cracker of a day. Once again, this hut is positioned, and no doubt there's a lot of thought went into it in this day. It's right out the back here, you're looking straight up onto the main range. Those pioneers that set all this infrastructure up certainly listened to the land and worked out what the best places were to set up shop. No doubt before them, the original custodians of the land did the same sort of thing because they're good places. Old Gehi Hut, also known as YHA Hut, was built by D. Benson in about 1945 for the New South Wales Water and Irrigation Commission. The hut was also used by the Nankervis and Mitchell families for a period of time until they built their own hut, the Gehi Hut, in about 1952. During the 1950s, the hut was used as a base for the Snowy Mountains hydro scheme for construction workers' accommodation. Once the authorities had finished using the hut, it was used as a youth hostel until about 1977 when the National Parks and Wildlife Service resumed the hut. We've selected a little campsite on the Victorian side of the Murray River, just downstream of the Tom Grogan crossing. And just up the back here is the Dogmans Hut, right on the banks of the Murray River there. And we're actually right on the boundary, just outside the boundary in the National Park, but on the boundary of Tom Grogan Station. Bit of ploughed paddock right there, and track off here going up to Mount Pinnabar. So we crossed the Murray River just back there. We're just poking around having a look. Dogmans Hut. I suspect the name says it all. Somebody's obviously looking after it a little bit inside. It's pretty tidy. It has been obviously a bit of an overzealous fire and got into one of the main structural support posts and burnt right through it. Early records suggest there was a hut on this site or close by as far back as 1905. This hut, however, was built by the Lands Department as a base for the dogmen who worked in the area in about 1964. The adjoining pastoral lease, Tom Grogan's station, is best known as the stomping ground for John Jack Riley, who was later to become immortalised as the man from Snowy River. The lad's just splitting a bit of timber there. We're going to cook a bit of lamb roast, I think, for dinner tonight. Looking forward to that. Just down here we've got the Murray River, and at this point it's a big river. It's interesting, a little bit of a flashback. Not that I've had anything to do with this bit of river really, but you know, a bit further downstream where it took off 2 years ago, almost to the day, yesterday I think it was, 2,000 plus kilometre trip down the Murray, but I didn't do this bit. This is fast water, and in fact there was a spot just back up here. It was a fair shoot. The water was just pumping through it. It's probably got a name. Anyway, nice secluded little spot here on the river, the Murray River this time. A little bit of an experiment tonight. We've got a couple of Greek lamb uroses there and a heap of veggies. The plan is to roast them in the camp oven, cook it all up in the camp oven, but on top of the fire rather than bury it all in coals and all that sort of traditional stuff. Looks like it's going to need a bit of browning or something. We could probably put a few coals in the top later on. I've got a trivet in there, so it's not actually in contact with the bottom of the pot, and I've also lined it with baking paper. Why? Not sure. Experiment. The whole thing's an experiment actually. See how it goes. Might go hungry, or might be here all night trying to make it work. The part of my rationale for trying this method is, in this part of the world, the wood's not all that good. You need a lot of wood. So what I've decided to do is, rather than have a big fire, I don't want a big fire because it's too hard collecting enough wood to have a big fire. So if I can just keep feeding a bit of timber in there, small pile of wood, just keep feeding it in gently, keep it constant heat. If I have to, I'll get a few going and actually then sit them on the top if I find that I need heat on the top. Effectively have a little fire sitting in the lid of in the cooker. I just figure it's one of those things, if you don't experiment, you actually don't know. Might be a long time before we get dinner, or we might cook it to charcoal. Start hearing it. Got a feeling this is going to be pretty good. That's been on for an hour and it's effectively cooked. The veggies are nice and soft and everything's cooked. So what I've done now, I've just put some heat on the top just to try and get some browning going on, if you like, make things a little bit crispy. That looks delicious, smells unbelievable. We've got a couple of these lamb rumps and then just some roast veggies in there. And it's certainly carving easily and it's certainly cooked. Hey! Oh, I don't think you'd like it. The crossing of the Murray River at Tom Grogan can be intimidating and is regularly unpassable. In this instance, the water, only for a brief moment, was lapping the top of our 37-inch tyres, or in modern language, just shy of a metre deep. For most vehicles, that would certainly be formidable. For our IVECO ULTRA-TOURER, it was well within its limits. The cameraman suggested that the river, and I quote, was spanner water deep. And this was certainly one occasion where I was thankful the lad doesn't have his driver's licence. A tragic tale or karma? It's not for me to determine. However, on the 7th of October 1952, the local Cooma newspaper reported, and I quote, "The finding of 2 dead bodies in a hut alongside the main road about 2 miles Cooma side of Kiandra has provided a mystery, the solution which seems likely to be both simple and fantastic. That hut was Sawyers Hill Rest House. Investigation revealed a truck loaded with farm supplies had been pinched from a garage in Cooma a few days prior. 3 fellas planned on using the truck to travel to Dubbo to find work. They had been observed drinking at both the Cooma Hotel and Adaminaby Hotel on October the 3rd. They continued their travels to Sawyers Hill, where they decided to spend the night. A couple of the fellas decided to drink what they thought was wine from bottles wrapped in paper they'd found in the truck. Turns out that wasn't the best idea, as the bottles contained arsine, a product used for stock dip that contains arsenic. The third bloke slept in the truck as he thought the men were crook from drinking too much alcohol. When he awoke the next morning, he found his 2 mates dead, so fled to Dubbo. In 1964, the hut was demolished and subsequently rebuilt by the Main Roads Department. It was then destroyed by the 2003 bushfires and rebuilt by the National Parks and Wildlife Service. Once again it was destroyed by the fires of 2020. Fortunately, it has once again been rebuilt and is a shining example of a modern, historic high country building. In about the 1830s, grazing on the long plain here was pretty much out of control. By the end of that century, there was something like 22 different grazing licences with a long plain, and early 1900s the Department of Lands or thereabouts actually allocated the leases and divided it up so that everybody had a bit of equitable share. But there's a fellow by the name of Arthur Trigg, who was a entrepreneur and grazier from down the Yass way. He held about 70,000 acres of lease area up here on the long plain. It's a fair holding even to today's standard. Arthur Trigg had about a dozen stations across the southern and western New South Wales plains and up into this high country with the leases, and ran something like 300,000 sheep. In about 1916, Dr. Albert Campbell of Allersdale Station took up a holding here on the Long Plain and built the Long Plain Hut on this site. That's what we're looking at now, and it's a fair hut. Evidently the original pub down at Rules Point, down the end of the Long Plains Road now, it's not there now, but down the end of the Long Plains Road, didn't have the space or the restrictions on the licence, didn't allow them to dance. So if anyone wanted to dance, they'd come here to the Long Plain Hut. And by all accounts, it wasn't unusual to see the piano loaded onto a dray and dragged down here for a session. And particularly notable one was at the end of the First World War. There was quite a major session and celebration, and no doubt the piano played until the wee hours while people pounded the boards in here. And you can see why it was built here. It's elevated, looking out across the plains. They would have had a fair overview of what was going on across their country. Probably just out of the frosty hollows, just hidden up into the trees, a little bit less cold. going to share our campsite tonight with a few of the local inhabitants. Popular spot, and no doubt they're keeping the grounds maintained. But they've certainly made this their home. I don't blame them really if you've got an outlook like we're looking at here. They all know a good campsite. Oh, look at this. This is solid construction. This is the cheese house apparently. The original building dates back to 1889, and they used this style of structure, this interlocked round logs, because apparently it provides significant thermal properties and it keeps it cool inside. And originally had a thatched, it's tin now, thatched roof, which really insulated the building, and it was good for storing, well, I guess among other things, the cheese. It's an amazing place. It's almost like a small village. You know, most of these sites have a hut, often a bit ramshackled. You know, that would have been the accommodation of the day. This has got accommodation, it's got cheese houses. What was over there?
That is the original hut, I think. Not the original, the one before this one. And then next to that is the kitchen. And out the back you got the dunnies.
The dunnies. That would have been important. A lot of work going on restoration wise. When the national parks took it over, I think it was in the 70s, mid to late 70s, it was pretty derelict. National parks have done a great job basically restoring it so we can all admire it and try and appreciate what everyone went through once upon a time. It's a long way from anywhere here. And no doubt if you were the manager and the manager's family stationed here, it would have been a bit of a lonely existence. You know, we dream of it these days. Wow, how romantic. Away in some sort of remote location, living the simple life. But the reality is we can still jump in the car and duck back to town and get on the internet and order a bit of tucker and get it delivered. If only the walls could talk. Plenty of stories here, mate.
Oh yeah.
And this apparently was the Campbell house. Dates back to something like 1889. There's a few versions of how it came to be here. Some suggest that it was relocated from other sites, others suggest it was built here. Either way, it would have been a mean feat to either carry it from somewhere else in bits or construct it from scratch here. Apparently the ceiling was lined with horsehair and calico for insulation. It's a lot of horsehair. It's a 5-bedroom, no, that's incorrect, 5-room building, so it was quite substantial. A couple of fireplaces. It's built with horizontal slab construction. And so, you know, just the work and effort involved in creating those slabs. This is amazing. There's all these different layers behind perspex now to preserve them. But all these different layers of newspaper. Magazine newspaper, the Australian there. The Sun, Thursday, July the 1st, 1937. And that's that layer there. There's layers behind and there's layers in front. It was about using materials to, well, using any materials you could get your hands on that were going to have some sort of benefit to you. Marlene Dietrich, The Song of Songs. What will Roosevelt do with his colossal gold hoards? Japan is warned. Agitations against British. Warwick Farm, 7 races on Monday, on August the 3rd, 1939. So you can only imagine what was going through people's minds in this era. You know, potentially a lot of the people that were involved in this place were marshalled up to go off to do other things. Oh, it's awesome. You could spend ages reading all this stuff. This little building out the back here was the cookhouse, or the kitchen as we'd know it. And they built the kitchen separate to the main buildings deliberately because they were renowned for burning down. You know, if it's part of the other building, well, you're going to burn the whole bloody lot down. So keep it separate. I suppose some of those lessons we learned the hard way. Now, I wouldn't usually spend too much time showing people the outhouse or poking around in the shitter, but this one's intriguing. Come and have a look. It's fascinating. I guess there's quite practical rationale why there's two shitters side by side. Maybe it's because we're all pretty friendly in the day and we didn't mind sharing. I suspect it's a bit more practical than that, and that is one's full, then before it gets a chance to be emptied, you've still got one to get you through the night. I don't know. Anyway, double dunny. Don't see that too often. This Cooinbil Homestead. It's probably in a textbook location. Interestingly enough, the veranda's on the eastern side of the building there. The hut was originally designed to have a veranda all the way around it. Apparently it was never built. Anyway, what's interesting was you can only imagine if it had a full veranda and you sat there watching the sun go down out to the west. There's the sun going down out there now. But you'd be looking right over all your holding. Sitting there, keeping an eye on your flock, watching the sun go down. That's the long plain out there. You can see why they selected this site though. There's water out the back. You can see anyone coming down there with the dust. Know what's going on around you. Cooinbil. But there seems to be a inundation of European wasps. I just found a nest in the ground. I thought it was someone flying a drone. And I looked down, I was nearly standing on a nest about 2 inches diameter, straight down. They were just pouring out of it. I nearly stood on it. Whew, that would have been disastrous. So yeah, look at that for location. Just high enough to probably stop the frost hanging. Now the frost would hang down in the valley there. So if you had it any lower, you'd be sitting down in that frosty hollow, which is why there's no trees down there, because it's that cold. Sitting up, elevated, let all that cold air settle down there below you. I think the old timers knew a thing or two. Clearly the spot to build your hut. Anyway, we might go and watch the sun go down, put a brew on, start cooking up some dinner. This is the Murrumbidgee River. It started just a couple of k's up there. The headwaters just up there behind us, here on Long Plain. Look how big it is already. Fair cranking. There's been a few fish rising too. We'll probably wrap up this video here. This has been quite an interesting little trip for us. Quite a mixture. We started off up on the Midda River, then the Big River, then we headed off on a walking trip for a few days, 3 or 4 days, and then come back and kept heading off in the truck. What did we get up to? We got up to the Gehi Hut River and the Swampy Plains River, wandered along, got onto the Threadbow River, glimpses of the Snowy. We didn't sort of poke around there too much this time. And up here on the Murrumbidgee River, there's probably a few in there that I missed. Not that water was the theme, but lots of history, lots of old huts, fascinating. History is always interesting, the toil of others that have come before us, whether they're working the land or prospecting or just trying to survive. Anyway, we'll probably wrap it up there. This has been great. Hope you enjoyed this little trip. Bit of a sort of a mixed bag, this one. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. If you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up. Maybe hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment. We enjoy the comments. G'day, mate. Friendly locals. Anyway, catch you next time. Thanks for watching.
Cameraman's life's hard work.
Testing, testing, testing. 1, 2. Oh, didn't film any of that.
I missed.